Welcome back, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. Day 4 of the Advanced SEO Summit brought to you by Neil Patel. And we had an exciting session with Eric just an hour ago or less, which you guys all can watch on demand, as well as all other sessions moderated by Clayton, Paul, and I throughout the week. We have Clayton joining us very shortly with Neil Patel, who will be delivering double keynote and sharing all of the secrets when it comes to search engine optimization, everything that you've been waiting for. So I hope all of you are ready. We will be broadcasting it on Facebook Live, and hope you guys can all join for it. But today, we also have a very exciting presentation, and I have Jason here with me, who's joining us all the way from Seattle. And Jason runs an agency, Bloom Audience, which specializes in link building. And he's also an expert on content marketing, as well as a contributor to a variety of publications, including Huffington Post, Inc. Magazine, Entrepreneur. And he prepared a very exciting presentation for all of you, how to scale guest posting to major media publication. But before we kick things off, I just wanted to remind you that Neil Patel Insider Club contest still going strong, and this is your last chance to participate by going to summit.neilpatel.com/insider-club, and that's where you can share with your friends for an opportunity to win free passes to the Growth Marketing Conference, as well as a one-on-one consultation with Neil himself. So with that, without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to Jason. Jason, please take it away.
Well, thank you very much, Vasil. And hey, everyone, welcome to my presentation on how to scale guest posting to major media publications. The goal of this presentation is to give you the tools you need to get articles published on major media publications like Forbes, Inc., TechCrunch, Entrepreneur.com, and others, which is awesome for branding, awareness, website traffic, and SEO. So first, a bit about me. My name is Jason Demers. I'm the founder and CEO of a Seattle-based content marketing agency called Audience Bloom. I'm also a regular contributor, or have contributed to a bunch of various major media publications. They include Forbes, Entrepreneur, the Huffington Post, Inc. Magazine, Time Magazine, Fortune, MSN.com, Yahoo.com, The Wall Street Journal, Search Engine Land, Search Engine Watch, and the list goes on. My company, Audience Bloom, specializes in link building. We help our clients get links and brand mentions from major media publications. And we do this by working with our clients to select publishers that they want to appear in, and then helping them reach out to those publications to pitch them with the content that those publications might want to publish. So if you're here because you want help getting links for your website from major media publications, I'm about to show you the exact process that worked for me to become a contributor at all the publications I've written for. If by the end you decide that you still want help, be sure to check out the website and our contact form at audiencebloom.com, or you can shoot me an email and I'll be happy to help. So I wish getting published on major media publications was as easy as just emailing an article to an editor and seeing it get published. Unfortunately, as you might imagine, it's not. Getting published on major media publications requires carefully executed strategy, which can be divided into 3 phases. Phase 1 is to establish your reputation. Phase 2 is to get your foot in the door. And phase 3 is to maintain and then grow that relationship. Phase 3 actually covers what happens after you get your first post published, but it's critical if you want to publish more than just once on a particular publication, and if you want to become a regular contributor, which has awesome benefits. As you might imagine, major media publications have no problem finding people who want to become contributors on their websites. And because they have no shortage of eager contributors, they can afford to be picky about who they work with and who they don't. They want people with a proven reputation or specific expertise that will add value for their readership. And that means you need to start by establishing a reputation for yourself. So what makes you qualified to speak or write on a given subject? If you can't answer that question right now, and you want to be able to get published on major media publications, it's time to start working toward being able to answer it. There are 4 steps for doing so, and we're going to go over each of them. They are defining your niche, establishing standout pieces on your blog, building strategic relationships, and building a social media following. Your first step may seem a bit obvious, but you've got to start by defining your niche. For me, when I started out, I started with SEO, and I've since branched out to just about all other aspects of online marketing and even broader entrepreneurial topics if you followed my entrepreneur.com column. But you've got to start small when you're just starting out, and not try to convince an editor that you're an expert on everything. Being an expert on one topic is much more believable, and it'll be a more compelling reason for the editor to want to give you a try. So get as specific as you can. For example, instead of saying you're an expert at social media marketing, maybe you could say you're an expert Instagram marketer or Twitter marketer. Next, think about your specific time period. For example, do you want to cover the history of your niche or industry, or will you cover current events, or perhaps even try to make predictions about the future? Once you've defined your niche, the next step is to establish some standout pieces which you can use as your portfolio. Getting an editor to respond to an email is already a major accomplishment, so you don't want to fall flat when they ask you for published samples of your writing and you can't truly impress them. Editors will almost certainly ask you for examples of your previously published work, so you need to prepare for this by establishing an impressive portfolio that you can show them. This portfolio should eventually include works both on and off your website, but for now, you can start with your own blog or website, since you can control everything on it and you can make sure it looks nice and polished. Oh, sorry, I switched to the next slide a little too soon there. When you send links to your previously published works, generally sending 3 links is enough. But you want there to be more than only those 3, so that when the editor visits those articles, they'll see there are more, which will make you look more experienced. So aim for at least 5 to 10 standout pieces on your blog, and down the road you can supplement those with some other published works on smaller, medium, external publications. So how can you know if an article is worthy of being considered standout? Well, odds are you probably already know if it is or isn't. Ask yourself this question. If your best friend was looking for advice on the topic you wrote about, would you feel 100% confident referring them to your article? If not, it's probably not standout. Standout pieces are generally at least 1,500 words, and they include embedded supporting media such as images, videos, or infographics. And if those articles have any comments on them, be sure you've replied to all of them thoughtfully and politely. This is a really good sign to editors that you're going to engage their audience, which drives more visits and page views for them. And of course, that makes them look good. Finally, be sure that the articles you send to the editor show impressive performance metrics, such as views or social shares. So here's one article from my company blog at AudienceBloom.com that got over 2,000 shares across various social networks. This would be a great article to include in my portfolio because it has performed so well. I use a plugin for WordPress called Social Warfare to display these social share counts. It's not free, but it's pretty cheap. It's only 29 bucks a year for one website, and I think it's well worth it. It's actually number 26 on my list of the top 30 marketing tools I couldn't live without, which if you're interested in checking out, you can find at bit.ly/AudienceBloomTools. Of course, getting a ton of shares on your content isn't easy, but I've written an entire guide on exactly the process I use to do it. It includes free tactics and some paid ones and has an infographic at the end that breaks down the whole process into a checklist that you can use for every piece of content you publish. So you can check that out on the Audience Bloom blog at bit.ly/contentunleashed. After you've published your articles, you'll want to use the steps I outline in that guide to get a bunch of shares and views on them. And if you haven't already caught on, I obviously practice what I preach about promoting my content, and I highly recommend you do the same. This will definitely help you when you're reaching out to various publications. Once you've defined your niche and established some standout pieces on your blog, you're ready to start building strategic relationships. The goals of this are to grow your reputation by expanding horizontally, because more appearances across various publishers equals a bigger reputation, to establish a credible publishing history, because many posts over time is better than just one post recently, and to become familiar with different editorial processes so you're prepared to deal with the big guns at national media publications when that time comes. Obviously, you can't just jump from having no reputation to a big one. You have to start from the bottom and work your way up, one step at a time. For instance, looking at this drawing, starting at the bottom step could mean reaching out to your friend who has a blog or a YouTube channel that you could be a guest on. Moving up to the next step, you might leverage that first guest appearance to pitch an acquaintance you've met at a networking event, or perhaps a first-degree connection on LinkedIn who's an editor at a smaller or medium-sized publication. You could subsequently leverage those appearances to take the next step up and pitch a second-degree connection on LinkedIn who's an editor at an even larger publication, and so on, gradually working your way up to the national media publications. Another good option is to find publishers that publicly solicit guest posts and pitch them. So I Googled publishers that allow guest blogs and took a screenshot of the results, which you can see here. 4 of the top 5 results were lists of blogs that accept guest posts, so finding these publishers really isn't hard to do. This is an excellent way to get your name published at a variety of publishers in your niche, which is extremely helpful for establishing your credibility, authority, and expertise. Those are the crucial elements of being able to publish at big national media publications. Your social media numbers have a huge impact on your likelihood of getting consideration from editors at major media publications. Publishers want authors who can promote their own work and drive page views to their website. So if you aren't on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, it's time to get active on those. Post at least once a day to each one, and multiple times a day is fine for Twitter. Be sure to promote your published works through your social media accounts, as this shows editors that you'll essentially give them free social media promotion if they work with you. That incentive grows as your audience grows, so work on getting more followers, especially on Twitter. You can get more followers by following other people, since they'll often follow you back, and simply engaging other people on these social media platforms so they have a reason to follow you and stay following you. Be active and don't treat your social accounts as a one-way communication channel. Engage with people in conversations. And of course, you can also use paid ads to get more followers if you've got that sort of marketing budget. Of course, getting more followers on social media is much more complicated than that. So I've written this huge article called 101 Ways to Get More Social Media Followers, which you can find on my blog if you want more ideas. You can find that one at bit.ly/AudienceBloomFollowers. After completing all the steps in phase 1, you're ready to move on to phase 2, getting your foot in the door with major media publications. Your first guest post with a major media publication will be the hardest one to get, but after you get it, it'll start this snowball effect that will make all the rest easier. In fact, with every new publication you land, every new subsequent one will get easier than the previous one. The steps for phase 2 include identifying editors at target publications, reaching out to them, and then accommodating everything they ask of you. Since this discussion is focused on major media publications, I'm going to skip covering how to find publications in your niche, since there aren't a ton of major national media publications, and if they fit that category, then you probably already know about them. So, assuming you already have a list of publishers you want to target, or you could easily make one, it's time to figure out who to contact at those publications to become a contributor. You're going to start by browsing the publisher's website to see if they offer a way to pitch an article or make a contribution. If they don't have any information on how to do so, turn to Twitter or LinkedIn and try to find out who their editors are. From there, you can use a tool to help you find each editor's email address, which you'll use to introduce yourself and get your foot in the door. Here's a nice trick that'll help you speed up the process of checking to see if a publisher accepts guest posts. You can use the Google OR operator along with the cite: operator in your search query to see if a specific domain has a page about guest posts or on how to become a contributor. I've got a screenshot of an example search query here so you can see how it's done. I tried this search query for VentureBeat.com, and the first result in Google was VentureBeat's guest submissions page. Clicking that link takes you to a page that provides instructions on how to get in touch with editors at VentureBeat, so that would be a promising next step to take. That trick won't always work, though. I tested it on HuffingtonPost.com and didn't get any promising hits. That second result that says guest post turned out to just be a tag directory, so it's pretty useless for our purposes. However, the third result does bring up the contact page for the Huffington Post, which includes a subsection that has instructions on how to contact the editors to pitch them a post. So that's a promising lead you could try. To be honest, though, in my experience, it's really unlikely you're going to receive a reply if you reach out through a generic contact form. Your best bet is to get in touch directly with an editor at the publication. LinkedIn is my go-to tool for finding editors at various publications. A simple search will often turn up the right person to contact, or at least someone who can point you in the right direction. As you can see from the screenshot here, I did a simple search in LinkedIn for VentureBeat.com editor, as you can see at the top there, and Harrison Weber was the top result. I clicked on his name to see his profile, and boom, here's his email address listed right there at the top. I really hope Harrison doesn't mind that I haven't censored his email address here, but I figure that since he has it displayed publicly on his LinkedIn page, he probably won't mind. Just do me a favor and don't reach out to him for at least a few months so he doesn't hate me if he suddenly gets 100 emails because of me. I have to admit that it's pretty unusual, though, for editors to make their email addresses this easy to find. I usually have to do some digging to find it. If Harrison's email address wasn't listed on his LinkedIn page here, the next thing I would do is try to find him on Twitter. A quick Google search led me to his Twitter profile, which you can see on the right side of the screen here, which includes a link to his personal website. I visited his personal website, and his email address is also listed right there at the bottom of it. So if I wanted to reach out and make a pitch to Harrison, I know exactly how to contact him. It's a good idea to repeat this process and try to gather as many editor names and email addresses as you can find at a particular publication, because if one doesn't respond to you, you can always just try another. Just don't email all of the editors at once. That's a surefire way to get on their radar as an annoyance rather than a potential asset. Once you've got a list of editors and publications you want to reach out to about contributing, it's time to actually reach out to them. Start with just one publisher at a time rather than sending emails to all the editors, because with every publisher you get published on, that'll increase your success rate on each subsequent publication. I've found email gets a far better response rate than LinkedIn messages, so go with email as your outreach method. The process is pretty straightforward, and I've got it listed here. You're going to start by sending your initial outreach email. Assuming you don't get a response from the editor, which is pretty typical, after 4 days, follow up with another email. Keep persisting with 2 more follow-ups a week apart. You can use a browser plugin called Boomerang for Gmail to automatically remind you if you haven't received a response from someone after a certain number of days, which makes sure you're able to stay persistent with your follow-ups. Boomerang is actually my #1 favorite marketing tool, so definitely check it out. Persistence really is key with outreach because it separates you from the hundreds of other people who are reaching out but never bothering to follow up. If after 3 follow-ups you still haven't received a response, it's safe to assume you aren't going to get a response from that editor. Look at your list of editors and start the process over again with a new one at that publication until you either get a response from someone or exhaust all your options at that publisher. If you exhaust all your options at a particular publisher, you can either move on to another publication and repeat these steps, or you can try to schmooze with the editors you emailed on Twitter or LinkedIn so they recognize your name in their inbox, and that will hopefully lead them to replying to you. The email that you send to the editor is the most critical component to actually getting a reply from them. Everything from your subject line to your spelling, grammar, and formatting are going to be scrutinized by the editor, and they play an enormous role in whether the editor will reply to you positively or even at all. In the next slide, I'm going to show you an example template for a cold outreach email, but for now, I'll cover the main elements of importance. The subject line should be unique or simple. The body of your email should start by addressing your contact by their first name, not something generic. Then start by introducing yourself briefly in no more than 1 sentence. Follow that by explaining why you're reaching out. Be humble and honest, and don't try to put a sales spin on anything you say. You're reaching out because you would like to contribute an article to the site or perhaps become an occasional contributor to the site. Follow that by including some links to your standout pieces and make sure that they're highly relevant to the publication that you're reaching out to. End your email with a thank you for their time and consideration. Here's an example of an email that I could send to Harrison. Since I'm already a columnist at some big name publications, I have the benefit of including that in my first sentence. Obviously, you'll need to replace those publishers with wherever you've managed to get published during phase 1. I like to use the subject line introducing myself because it's simple and honest. but you can try other subject lines and see how they work for you. I haven't really tested subject lines to see which ones have better open rates for these purposes, so feel free to test it out and see what works. I'll read this email so that we can all read along. Hi, Harrison. My name is Jason Demers, and I'm a regular columnist at Forbes, Entrepreneur.com, Inc., The Huffington Post, and various other online publications. I'm reaching out because I'm trying to build relationships and a name for myself as a thought leader in the marketing and startup community. Would you be open to working with me as a contributor at VentureBeat? Here are some examples of my work. Of course, if there's someone else I should get in touch with about this, I'd really appreciate if you could point me in the right direction. Thanks for your consideration. Cheers, Jason. I've found that it's unlikely you'll receive a response after your first outreach attempt, but if you can increase the odds of getting a response by being persistent with your follow-ups. Unfortunately, it's still unlikely you're going to get a response, and even less likely you'll get a positive one even after all of your follow-ups. But when you do get a positive response, it's kind of like the feeling you get when you finally feel a bite, to use a fishing metaphor, and sealing the deal feels a lot like reeling in a big catch. It's exhilarating. A positive reply from an editor will generally be a request for pitches or ideas as a starting point. This is the part where you'll need to familiarize yourself with the publisher's website, the types of articles they typically publish, and the ones that typically perform best. A tool like BuzzSumo is a great way to find out what articles have performed well for that publisher in the past. This is a screenshot that shows the results in BuzzSumo for when I searched for Inc.com. The results show articles published on the site ranked in order of how many shares they received across Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Pinterest, and Google+ combined. BuzzSumo, by the way, is number 5 on my list of must-have marketing tools, which, again, you can find at bit.ly/AudienceBloomTools. So I can use these search results to propose some article titles and short descriptions for each article idea that I send to the editor. After you send in your pitches, the editor will either accept one or more of the pitches or send you some revisions on your pitches based on what they want or need. They may even ask for something unrelated to the specific niche you started with, depending on how badly they need something written on a particular topic. This most often happens when there's some hot item in the news that they want covered from every angle possible to maximize page views. At this point, all you need to do is accommodate everything they ask for, no matter how ridiculous it seems. This is your chance to get your foot in the door, and you'll have more flexibility and authority once you build a reputation and establish trust with that editor. After your first pitch is approved, write the full article, ensuring it complies with any and all guidelines they provided to you, and then send it to your editor. There are 3 common ways editors prefer to receive articles and make revisions on them. The first is through direct submission, which is where they give you an author login to the WordPress backend, where you can submit your article draft directly for review. Editors will make changes as they see fit before publishing your article. The second is through editorial review, which is where you'll email in a draft of your work, usually as a Word document, then receive feedback from the editor on any edits or revisions they need, which you can incorporate into your second draft. The third is through collaboration, which is where you'll use Google Docs or a similar collaboration software. Of course, even after multiple rounds of editing, it's still possible to have your article outright rejected. Outright rejection usually only occurs after a first draft is submitted and before the revision process has begun, but I've had it happen after multiple rounds of revisions, which is definitely disheartening, but it's still something to be prepared for. Once you make it through the revision process, the editor will usually ask you for a headshot and a short author bio. Make sure you have a professional-looking headshot ready to send in and craft your bio. You can see my standard bio and headshot here. A bio typically consists of a sentence about who you are and what you do, and I also recommend including social media links so that your readers can follow you. After sending in your headshot and bio, it's usually just a matter of time until the post is published. And once you get your first post published, you're going to feel like a total badass. Not only will you get bragging rights about being published in a major media publication, you can leverage that fact in your other marketing efforts. For instance, if you look at my company homepage at AudienceBloom.com, we've got a scrolling banner that shows all the major media publications we've appeared in. It's a fantastic way to prove your legitimacy and credibility, which can be a huge boon for your site-wide conversion rates. Including these logos on your contact page can also help improve conversion rates for new leads reaching out to you. Also, don't forget to share and promote your newly published article on your social media accounts and any other appropriate channels you can think of. Content without any readers is lonely content. Don't let your content be lonely. I mentioned this earlier, but for a whole bunch of ideas on how to promote your content, you can see my full guide at bit.ly/contentunleashed. Phase 3 is all about building on your new relationship with the editor or publication. Getting published once is great, but becoming a regular contributor or columnist at a major publication is even better. The steps for Phase 3 include discovering or creating a rhythm, learning from the past, accepting direction, promoting your best work, and growing your audience. After your first post is published, reach out to the editor to establish a few things. First, your beat or niche within this publisher. Second, how to submit ideas in the future. For example, you can ask if the editor prefers to receive pitches for approval first, or if they're cool with letting you submit full articles for consideration. Third, find out how often you should pitch new ideas or submit new articles. Some publishers will allow you to send in as many as you like, and others, such as Inc. or Forbes, require a certain minimum amount per month. Be sure to set boomerang reminders whenever you send an email so nothing falls through the cracks. This is super important because it's very common for editors to just not respond to your emails until after a few follow-ups. I don't know why this is, and it's really frustrating, but follow-up reminders will save your sanity here. Once you have at least 10 articles published with a certain publisher, you can start analyzing trends. Take a look at your articles and find out what topics get the most views, likes, shares, and comments. What post features stand out in your successful content, such as images, length, structure, or takeaways? How does your audience respond? You can look at comments on your posts to get a feel for this. BuzzSumo is helpful for quickly finding out which posts performed well or performed the best in terms of social shares. It's especially helpful if you want to compare posts across different publishers. You can use the author : search operator in BuzzSumo to filter posts only by a specific author, such as yourself, and rank them in order of social shares they received. This screenshot here shows my most popular posts over the last year. It looks like Business Insider and Entrepreneur.com are working pretty well for me. All my top 5 articles in terms of shares come from those 2 publishers. 3 of these posts are directed toward millennials with titles that tell you what to do in your 20s or 30s, so that tells me that much of my audience are probably millennials. You and your editor will be a tag team. Your editor will love you more if your articles perform well because it'll make your editor look good to their boss. Their job is probably to maximize page views, so do what you can to help them achieve their goals, and they'll help you achieve yours. Always accept any direction they give you, and don't hesitate to ask what you could be doing better or how to improve. If you can build relationships with other editors or staff members of the publication, that'll help solidify your standing as a valuable contributor in the eyes of not just one editor, but the whole team. If you have a piece that you're especially proud of, promote it. This will earn you more visibility and will also prove to your publisher that you're worth keeping around. Some ideas for promotion include immediately updating your social networks with every new post, interlinking your posts, which means linking to old posts from newer ones, which helps boost their search rankings and directs readers to them to increase their page views. And you can even try paid ads to drive short-term traffic to the posts. Whenever you publish a new article, there's a few things you need to be sure to do. First, announce it to your social media followers. Next, watch for new comments so you can reply to them. Reader engagement through comments is a great way to pick up new followers and to build brand loyalty. On an ongoing basis, keep building up your followers in each of your social channels so that you can get eyeballs on your content, and periodically ask your followers what kind of content they would like to see and then give it to them. As an example of this, in early 2016, I created a 1-question survey in Typeform that asked my email newsletter audience what topics they wanted me to cover in depth so they could learn more about. 540 people responded, and the results of that survey question are shown here. Content marketing, social media marketing, and brand building were the top 3 topics voted on. So I created guides for each of those on the Audience Bloom blog. I also used that information to inform the content direction I took with the other various publishers that I work with. This survey was a fantastic way for me to get a snapshot of what my audience wanted or needed from me in terms of content. After you've developed a relationship as a consistent contributor with your first major media publication, it's time to set sail, expand your horizon, so to speak, and look for new publishers to repeat the process with. With experience at one major media publication under your belt, you'll see that your success rate increases with the next, and it's a snowball effect. The more publications you get on board with, the easier getting on board with the next will be. The only problem at that point will be managing all your relationships, ensuring you have enough time to write all that content while maintaining a high level of quality and promoting the content. You can outsource certain pieces of this process, such as by hiring a personal editor to proofread your work and a social media manager to promote your work after it's been published. Find your perfect balance with all the other responsibilities that you have in your business, and you'll have it made. I can tell you that this is the exact process I use to become a contributor at all the places I write for, and it's been the single biggest factor in growing my business. It's content marketing at its finest, and while it takes consistency, persistence, and dedication, it's well worth it in the end. So to wrap up, here are the key takeaways. In phase one, you'll need to start by defining your niche, creating awesome portfolio pieces, building strategic relationships, and then building your social media audience. In phase two, you'll start by identifying editors at target publications, perfecting your email outreach template, reaching out, and then accommodating all the editor's requests until you get published. In phase three, you'll work to establish a posting rhythm, learn what works and what doesn't from your past pieces, accept editor direction, promote your best work, and nurture and grow your audience over time. The three tools that we covered in this presentation include Social Warfare, which is the plugin for WordPress that displays social media share counts on your posts, Boomerang for Gmail, which is a plugin for Gmail that automatically reminds you when an email recipient hasn't responded to your email after a certain number of days, and BuzzSumo, which is a web-based tool that helps you figure out what content is the most popular on a particular publication or written by a particular author. So that concludes this presentation. I want to thank you very much for listening, and I will now open the floor to Q&A.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jason. If everyone can hear us, just go ahead and type yes in the chat. And we have a lot of questions coming up right now for you. So let's get ready and let's get into it. Looks like the audience really enjoying the presentation. Can you, before we kick things off, can you elaborate a little bit and maybe from your personal experience? Because some of my friends in digital marketing who are also contributors, they consider it being purely brand awareness, and some of them really tracking ROI when it comes to being a contributor on publications like Huffington Post, Entrepreneur Inc. magazine. In your personal experience, what is how you should approach it? Is it purely for brand building? Is it for immediate ROI tracking, or is it something in between?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's really difficult to track and to tie a specific ROI to this. So for me, I look at it much more in terms of brand building. There are benefits beyond brand building, though. You know, when you get published at a major media publication, you'll almost certainly have a link back to your website. You know, usually it'll be from your author bio. It could be from a link that you include in one of the articles that you contribute, you know, to one of those publications. So there are SEO benefits, which can, of course, drive increased organic search traffic, but it's really hard to know. In fact, I would say impossible to know just how much those links affected your organic search rankings. So safely, I would say there are definitely multiple benefits to this, but I like to think of it mostly in terms of brand building and brand awareness.
Gotcha, makes sense. Great, so let's dive into Q&A from the audience here. We have a question from Randy, the most upvoted question. What is the best way to approach authority in your niche when your blog is new and you're basically nobody? How long do you wait?
Well, I don't think that you necessarily need to wait any amount of time. You know, your blog can have been published today for the first time, but as long as it's got amazing content on it, you can carve out a place for yourself in your niche. One example that I like to kind of point out, and I've used this in the past in similar situations, has been waitbutwhy.com. And I like to use them as an example because I think they've only been around for about 3 years. But if you look at how many email subscribers they have and the amount of Patreon pledges that they have, it's phenomenal for a blog that's only been around for 3 years. The writer of it, Tim Urban, has become so popular that he's given TED at least one TED talk. His articles are hotly anticipated, including by myself, because they're just that good. And so if you can create content that's just that good, that people just they can't wait to see, or it's so helpful, then it doesn't matter how new your blog is. Just focus on being better than everyone else. That's my advice.
Great answer, Randy. This takes care of your question. Let's go to the next one from Phil. How can I approach authority websites if I'm selling products? Do I downplay the product sales and focus on another angle?
That's a good question, because obviously when you approach an editor at a major media publication, they're going to want to know who you are and what you do. My advice is to be honest with them. I tell people that I run a marketing agency. All the information is publicly available. And, if you sell a product or if you sell a service, go ahead and tell them what you do. But what I would say is highlight or emphasize why you are qualified to become a contributor and what value you can bring. It's very uncommon that people just write for a publication without having some other way of making money. Because most publications don't pay you for your contributions. And so most people, probably 90+% of contributors that you see at these publications they have another full-time job. And so editors are not shy to knowing the truth. So my advice is to be honest.
And just a quick follow-up to it, in your experience, and I'm sure you pitched to many editors to become a contributor, what are some of the things that maybe one of the editors said that made him pick you right away and made you maybe stand out from the crowd, besides just the pitch, besides just the messaging? Maybe they looked at your LinkedIn profile, or what is something that you need to be aware of in addition to just messaging when you craft your pitch?
Well, the only thing I know for sure of would be my persistence. I think I became a contributor at Forbes 3 or 4 years ago, and I had to reach out to the editor. I think I used Boomerang, and I think I followed up with him 5 times before he finally got back to me. And he, after that, he responded with a one-liner that said, "Well, you certainly are persistent." And he said, let's schedule a call for next week. So right there, I learned the value of persistence. Maybe I was pestering him, but you know what? It worked. I've been a contributor at Forbes since then. It's done wonders for my brand awareness and my personal brand and my business. And what I learned definitively in that moment was that persistence probably differentiated me from everybody else who was, reaching out, wanting to become a contributor. So definitely be persistent. Other things such as your LinkedIn profile and, your grammar and your spelling and your email, that all matters too. If you have a bunch of typos, why would an editor want to work with you if they feel like you're just going to be a pain in the ass, to edit all your articles? So those are all very important too, but I can definitively tell you that persistence is key. Great.
Have you tried any personalized gifts by any chance?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Have you tried any personalized gifts to editors, sending a personalized note, maybe handwritten note, or even a present?
I haven't tried that, but it wouldn't be something that I would not recommend. I mean, if you're getting stonewalled on your persistent, email outreach, maybe send them a gift basket on Amazon that says something, with a tag that says something like, maybe now you'll notice me, or, I don't know, something polite and friendly and, maybe a little bit playful. It's not something I've tried, but it's worth a try, sure.
Yeah, I've seen this being done quite effectively. So I'm actually thinking about, I'm recruiting speakers. I'm kind of in the same boat, but actually I haven't tried. I'm not a contributor, but based on your presentation now, I'm definitely considering doing a few outreaches. But I do recruit a lot of speakers for the conferences. and I'm using all kinds of creative approaches. Maybe at some point we can talk offline about it, but let's make sure that we cover all the questions from the audience.
All right, sounds good.
So Sanjay here is asking, he's making a statement, research shows that longer content ranks better, but at the same time, the article gets boring and shows low retention time. Okay, so I guess he's questioning the value of the long form article, saying that people not necessarily reading it completely, if I'm understanding it correctly, or maybe it can come off as boring just because it's too long. Any thoughts on that, Jason?
Yes. It really depends on who your target audience is, when and where they're reading your content, and really just what you're writing about. If I can go back to the waitbutwhy.com example, look at the posts that pretty much every post there, and almost all of them are at least, gosh, I think like 20,000 words. I mean, those are the longest form content that I've seen on a blog. And like I said, his success speaks for itself. You know, last I checked on Patreon, he's making, you know, well over $10,000 a month from readers who are just supporting his blog writing. And not to mention, he's got over, I think, 300, maybe 400,000 email subscribers and hundreds of thousands of followers on social media. And we're talking about a 3-year-old blog that's completely based on long form content. So you can't just definitively say long form content doesn't work. It really just depends. Short form content might be great for one audience, but might not work well for another, and vice versa.
Great. Excellent. It all makes sense. So let's see here. What else we got? What if the website I target doesn't allow do follow links? Is it beneficiary, or I must consider some other websites? And by the way, it has been a great part of the summit. Thank you, Sammy.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the kind feedback there. As far as whether or not the links are do follow or no follow, I would ignore that. There have been correlation studies that have shown that no follow links do seem to impact ranks positively. If you avoid all no follow links, then that actually might look unnatural on your link profile as a whole. But also just remember that there are so many more benefits to this than just SEO. You know, you're talking about brand awareness, and you're talking about referral click-through traffic, and you're talking about building a portfolio that you can show to other editors that maybe do allow do follow links. So I wouldn't let that deter me.
Great. All right, I was just exploring the chat here to see if we have any other questions. Okay, let's look at the most upvoted here. What are some strategies for posting a client as a subject matter expert or an authority in their field if they're brand new? I guess it's from the agency standpoint.
Okay, so it sounds like the question is, how do you position your client as a subject matter expert? You know, that's not something I could really speak to. That's probably something that you're going to have to work through and just kind of explore on your own. I don't have experience with that. Yeah,
I think a couple of my friends were able to do it. And I think the best way is to become authority yourself first before you even bring clients. I like how you mentioned that everybody's selling product or service at some point. But as long as you don't lead with it, right? I would like to mention it to the editor and tell him that, how do I get my client as a contributor? I think this is something that would get a big no-no off the bat. Okay, great. Let's see what else. Jason, are you seeing also all of the questions that are coming in right now?
Yes, I'm seeing those.
Yeah, there's tons of them. So why don't you pick a few that you would like to answer while we let everyone to upvote some of the questions. You see that that tab on the left, right? Ask a question and suggest a topic.
Okay, so the top one I see, Vasil, is the benefits of SEO are sometimes hard to explain. Is that has 18 votes? Is that what you're seeing at the top?
Yes, we can go ahead and start with this one.
Okay, well, I'll start with that. So I'll read it first. The benefits of SEO are sometimes hard to explain to clients or bosses because SEO is so complex and often doesn't have instant results. What are some common misconceptions about SEO and PR outreach you see when talking to clients or peers? How do you address them? Okay, well, this may require a more in-depth answer than I can give here. I've actually written a number of articles that address misconceptions about SEO, and one of them was recently. So I hate to do this, but I would say go to Google and type in Jason Demers SEO misconceptions, and you'll see probably a dozen or so that I've done on this topic. I'm a little afraid to try and give a short answer here when I've given much more full answers already online. So I have answered this, but it's already published online. So go ahead and Google it, and you'll see what I have to say there.
Excellent, thank you, Jason.
All right. How many guest posts are too many? That's the next one I see.
Yeah, let's do that one.
Well, I don't think that there really are ever too many. I mean, as long as you are posting quality content, then the more the merrier. I mean, I don't see a reason why quality content, I don't see any way you could have too much of a quality thing. Hope that answers that.
Yeah, do you have any specific schedule for your content to be released? I'm assuming you have the editorial calendar. Anything that works for you best, specifically for your agency?
If you look at how often I contribute to the various places that I do, I contribute on average about 3 times a week to Forbes, twice a week to entrepreneur.com, maybe once every few months to Search Engine Land, once every few months to Huffington Post. Whenever an editor asks me for a contribution, which happens occasionally, I will generally accommodate that as well. So kind of on a as they ask basis. The reason why I've kind of distilled most of my contributions to Forbes and Entrepreneur is that I've found that those 2 publications tend to work the best for me in terms of views, like page views and referral traffic, and the comments that I get and things like that. So I tend to focus in on those 2 because of a perceived ROI.
Great. And what is your take on guest posting versus investing heavily into building your own blog?
Well, I think you definitely need to do both. I mean, in order to do guest posts, you almost always need to start with your own blog and have quality content there, kind of build that foundation. Quality content on your own blog is also necessary for attracting good organic search traffic. If you have a website that's just full of a bunch of commercial sales pages, but it has no great content on it, then it doesn't really matter how many links you have from your guest posts. Your website's just not going to perform very well. So the short answer is you need to do both for a proper, robust SEO campaign.
Gotcha. Great. All right. So let's go ahead and move to the next question. Let's see. We got one from Luca. Imagine personal branding plays a large role here. How do you recommend going about it? Do you need a high quality headshot? Yeah.
Yes, personal branding does play a large role. I mean, your personal brand is built up through your reputation that you get from your guest posts. As a matter of fact, it's the reason why I'm here speaking today, because of my personal brand that I've built up. As far as needing a high quality headshot, yeah, I'd say that that's somewhat important. I mean, I started out with a not so high quality one, and was still able to get published on several big name publications using that. But I also I am more happy with my current one, which was a professionally taken one. Although I think that one is 4 or 5 years old. I need a new one, but it works, and I do think it's somewhat important. Yes.
Great. Any tips on using Haro? Have you heard of Haro? I think it's hire a reporter.
It's help a reporter out. So tips on using Haro to get published or mentioned on high authority websites. Yes, I've used Haro on multiple occasions. I do recommend it, and I've written about it in some of the works that you can find on the blog at audiencebloom.com. But as far as tips, I mean, obviously start by signing up for it. Once you get the emails, just look through each one. I don't think there's any secrets that I can really give you here. It's just a matter of reaching out to responding to the request politely and professionally. Again, proper grammar and spelling is really important. When someone only has, a paragraph or so, or maybe a couple of sentences on which to judge you against a field of maybe 50 people who responded to that, that's your only opportunity to stand out. And so pay attention to the quality of your spelling, grammar, politeness, friendliness, your professionalism, and paint a picture for why you are more qualified than somebody else who reached out. And you can do that by outlining your standout pieces, or kind of mentioning that you're a contributor at various places or that you're a subject matter expert.
Perfect. Thank you, Jason, for that extensive question. Just want to make sure. I'm hearing a little bit of echo here. Double check if by any chance I have any other tabs open. Do you have any tabs open by any chance, Jason?
No, I don't. Are we having some feedback?
A little bit. Oh, okay. Looks like now it's done. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Based on your usual blogging and what you just outlined as your contribution schedule, how do you get so much high quality content reading? Do you have a consistent system for it?
Yes, I dedicate my mornings, the first 2 to 3 hours of my morning, to writing content. And the reason why I carve out that time is that my mornings are my most productive times. I wake up, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and that's my most productive time. And I become less productive, from early afternoon on. So I crank out all my content writing in the mornings. And the reason why I allocate time to that, and so much time to that, is because it works so well. I see a clear correlation between my guest contributions and the growth of my business. My company preaches content marketing, and I like to practice what I preach because it really, really works that well. So it's the most important piece of marketing for my business. So that's why it's so important to me.
Excellent. And guide us a little bit through your process that you have behind it. So when you finished writing a piece, do you send it to one of your team members, copy editors, or do you have the whole system set up around it? If you can elaborate, would be great.
Yeah, so I used to when I was first starting out, but I've become so used to it because I've been doing this for 4 or 5 years now, that I'm pretty confident in proofreading my own work now. When I was a student in high school and college, I was always the guy who my teammates or classmates would, give their papers to me to proofread. So I've kind of always been comfortable with that role. I know that that's not a comfortable role for many people, though. And so for that, I would recommend having, either an editor or somebody who you can send for peer review to just review your work. But for me, I'm just lucky in that I'm just kind of used to it. I'm just a natural at editing, and so I'm comfortable with that.
Excellent. This takes care of Randy's question as well. Let's see. So we got another one coming up. What do you do when the high authority website ranking for search terms in your niche are negative press?
Well, if I understand your question, you're saying that, for instance, you might go to Google and do a search for your niche, and the high authority websites are negative press. So I mean, the way I'm comprehending that question is that the publishers only publish negative articles, unless unless what you mean is to say that you're finding a bunch of negative articles ranking for your keyword. So I'll just address both alternatives. If you find a bunch of articles that are ranking negatively for your keyword, then maybe that means there's an opportunity for you to become a contributor to that publication and get some positive stuff out. However, Google is known for having a negativity bias. And the reason for that is because people are more likely to consume or click on negative headlines. This is why the national media is so biased towards negative things. It triggers something psychologically in us humans where we are more likely to consume negative things. So as Google sees more people clicking negative things, that tells Google that it must be a more popular thing, or it must be a more, it has a higher click-through rate and thus be more high quality, which, isn't the case. It's just that it's negative. But that's why Google does have a negative content bias, which is unfortunate, but it's the case. So those are kind of my two thoughts regarding negative content coming up for your search.
Vixian, hope it was helpful. We have time for about 2 more questions before we get to the final keynote of the day with Neil. So let's see. Do you see any questions, Jason, that you really want to answer here? Because we kept them, they keep coming.
Let's see here. I'm just reviewing these now. So at what point, well, I'm just looking at the top one. At what point do you start becoming so prolific that you can charge for a guest post? And what would be a reason why a company would or wouldn't pay someone for guest blogging or becoming a regular blogger on a site? So at what point do you start becoming so prolific that you can charge for a guest post? There's a number of ways to interpret that, but the way that I interpret that is that you're asking, once you have written for enough publications, when can you charge? For instance, you can either charge the publisher for supplying them with a guest post, or a client. I'm assuming you probably mean a publisher. So when it comes to that, there have been very few cases where I have been paid by publishers to contribute. I think in one case, I requested to become a paid contributor, which they acknowledged due to the awesome performance of my previous articles. So I would say it's kind of on a case-by-case basis. Now, what would be a reason why a company would or wouldn't pay someone for guest blogging? I think that a reason for paying somebody would be kind of like in the case I just talked about, where if you're just that good and they can't stand to lose you, and you tell them the only way I have time to continue fitting this into my schedule is if you're going to pay me, well, then it becomes a negotiation, and it's up to them to decide whether it's worth it. However, if they are a popular publication, they most likely have dozens, if not hundreds, of eager, wannabe guest posters that are reaching out to them, and likely have no shortage of contributors to choose from. So I would say don't look at this as an opportunity for making money directly from these publishers. Look at it as an opportunity for building your brand awareness, and traffic to your website, and then make money through your website rather than through these publishers.
Excellent. And looks like we have time for just one more question. And I'm going to rephrase it slightly. A question from Dave. I'm also put a slightly different spin on it. How do you ensure a piece of content you are ready to produce is worth producing? I ask because on one project we produced hundreds of awesome pieces of content but got zero traction. So I'm really cautious with these days. Actually, let's just go ahead and answer this question first.
Sure. Well, how do you ensure a piece of content that you're ready to produce is worth producing? Sometimes there's not a good way to know until you publish it and see how it does. Oftentimes, you might have the best piece of content that's ever been produced on that topic, but your problem is that not enough people know of its existence. In which case, you need to promote the heck out of it. And that includes using paid ads or, or like I mentioned earlier in the presentation, finding my guide on how to promote your content. With that said, there is research you can do beforehand before you create content so that you can kind of steer or guide the direction of it. And that would include keyword research, as well as using a tool like BuzzSumo to see, you can plug in a keyword and see what types of content have performed well for your competitors, on that topic, and then, find something similar and do it better. Those would be the thoughts that I have initially off the top of my head. Do your keyword research, and if you've done your keyword research, publish something and you still have zero traffic on it or zero traction, maybe you just need to plug $1,000 of ads into it to get it rolling. And once it gets enough views and shares and comments, maybe Google will pick it up and start displaying it higher in organic search, and maybe from there it'll be just fine. So those would be my two thoughts.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jason, for joining us today. Thanks, everyone. We are super excited to thank you, Jason, for excellent content. But we are looking forward to the next session where Neil himself will join live, and the session will be moderated by Clayton. He will present double keynotes, and you guys will be joining him in just a few seconds. Jason, thank you so much, and we will see you soon.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.